Welcome to the Grief Bully podcast. I am your host, J.Nicole. Thank you for joining our weekly discussion around grief, mental health, and your overall personal wellness. The Grief Bully podcast will serve as a vehicle to help you navigate life's journey. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the podcast with anyone in your life that you think it will help. Let's bully grief together. What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the Grief Bully podcast. I am your host, J.Nicole. Today is Monday, January the 25th. We are back in the studio, rocking and rolling, episode 76. I am not in the studio by myself. Looking forward to getting into today's episode. We are going to talk a little bit more in depth about Pieces of a Woman, a Netflix movie that we watched on our list where grief showed up on a big screen. So before we get into that, I do want to thank our sponsors, BetterHelp. They are an online counseling organization offering us the opportunity to have counseling and therapy from the privacy of our home. They are affordable, averaging about $65 per week or so. And when you use my link, trybetterhelp.com/thegriefbully, you will receive 10% off your first month. So again, you're going through a tough time, reach out to BetterHelp. So we are back in the studio. I have my co-host with me back here again for another episode. Adena Jay, what's up?
Hey.
Okay, we got you back because we having you in here when we're going over these movie reviews where grief is all through them. Why do you even go through with that to watch movies constantly that talk about grief?
It was funny because last night we were watching a movie and it wasn't supposed to be a grief movie, but it had grief in it. And I'm like, starting to think like there's grief in every single movie.
That is actually what is everyone saying now? Facts. That's facts, because it depends on how you look at things, but it's unintentional that is the case where grief is showing up because we're not even really seeing it in the title. So the movie we watched last night, we'll get to that, but having Adena Jay with us here today to talk about this is important to me. I think when you're speaking of a review and you only offer your perspective, of course, the audience can go check it out for themselves. But I think it's pretty cool to have someone else to add their 2 cents into it.
Thank you.
And so if you've been following me on Instagram, you know I've been doing these reviews. I put up a short reel, then I make a video on YouTube, averaging under about 4 minutes or so. This most recent one I think was about 3 minutes or something like that. Just a little bit, just enough to get you interested, to have you go check it out, see where grief does and doesn't show up, where it doesn't apply, and what you like about it. And so this movie is called Pieces of a Woman. It's actually newer. It was released, I believe, in September of 2020, so early last year. Isn't it weird?
That is weird.
So weird, because I had to catch myself. I almost said earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's still when I'm working full time and I'm like, oh, yeah, I haven't talked to you yet this year. That's been my one-liner.
So corny.
Yeah, absolutely corny. And we're going to stop. Wait, this is the Grief Bully podcast. You're going to bully me on my podcast?
Yeah, and you were saying at the end of last year, you were like, oh, see you next year.
See you next year.
So corny.
Right. So let's get into this. So this movie was on Netflix, and it's called Pieces of a Woman. Vanessa Kirby, Shia LaBeouf, however you say his name, pardon me. Actually, he's in hot water right now, so we'll just move past that.
Yikes.
But this movie was interesting. It was long. Actually, over 2 hours.
It was so long.
Yeah. It was a long movie. But I think it was necessary, and it was needed. So pretty much the PS to what happened is there's a young couple, thriving, happy, life appears and seems good. Mm-hmm. And then they're expecting a child, their first child, between each other and just in general. Everything's going well, and they wanted to have a home birth. Mm-hmm. And so they opted to have a home birth, and that didn't work out well, unfortunately. And so they lost their child, and we can talk about that. That's not a spoiler. That's in the premise, and if you Google the movie, you'll see it. And then we go from there. Mm-hmm. So let's just talk about it. Let's get into it. What
are we is this a non-spoiler?
No, we can talk about the movie. I mean, there wasn't really in this movie. I don't think there was anything. There was really no like twist or anything like that I think can be spoiled. I think it's just basically if you want to watch a movie where you can see another way that grief shows up and how this could be. So yeah, let's just get into it. No, not holding back.
Okay. Well, like you said, the movie started off with the birth of the child that went bad. And I think the beginning of the movie was kind of slow, and I think looking back, it was, like you said, necessary, because the whole first half of the movie pretty much is the home birth.
True.
And so, like, the shooting of that, and I liked how the movie was shot. It had like the long shots, and like it just was interesting. And
Yeah, because I mean, you did say that the movie, you liked the way that it was shot.
yeah.
And I never actually asked you, and this is your first time actually elaborating what that meant, where you're like, during watching it, you're like, I love this, I love the way it's shot. And I'm like,
Yeah,
so
because
you're a
there's
videographer
no,
now?
I visually see things maybe differently than some people do. I'm not a videographer. I don't know the first thing about videographering.
Videographering. Wow.
Any type of movies, but visually the movie had, like a longer shot. It also had like, you know, the focus wasn't always on the people that were talking, which is how normally movies are. So if I'm talking in a movie scene, the camera is focused on me and whoever I'm talking to, or whatever the case is. But this movie, it wasn't like that. So it was like the primary thing that was happening in that scene wasn't in focus. Does that make sense? Even during the birth, there was a shot where the baby had come out. They're like, oh, the baby, like the parents are, but that's not what's being shot. So you don't see that. You see the midwife and her, expressions and all that stuff.
And
So
why do you like that? Like, why is that important? Because you just talked about that for like 5 minutes.
did I?
So, yeah. So
I
let's
don't
just.
know. I don't know why it's important.
Do you think it brings it in, or you're just making an assessment of the movie?
No, I don't know. I don't know what it did or didn't do. If it was shot differently, what that would have did or not done. But I just think that because of, like, with grief, it's just something that's always like, there's stuff going on, but that's not what's important maybe, or that's not what's in focus at that moment. And I don't know if I'm reading too much into it or
No,
not.
but that's why you're here. Like, that's the whole point of this, is to have people who have different perspectives, because I never considered that. And what I was just asking you, I wasn't trying to make fun of you by saying, like, why did you just spend 5 minutes talking about that?
Yeah.
But I was trying to see if that had an effect on how you perceived or took the movie in or not. I remember specifically one moment when you said that, and this is why I wanted to draw that connection, because I think that it is important, the way that it was shot for you and how you interpreted the movie. It was a scene where the family, basically the mother, well, the grandmother, had called like a intervention, or to have that meeting at her home. And they were kind of how they were all in like the dining room talking, but this was going on, and like that was there. And that's when you said it again, like, oh, I love the way this is shot.
Yeah, so it was like the people were talking, but the camera is focused on the woman who lost the child. She's like walking around the house. She poured a glass of some type of alcohol. Then she's just, slowly just kind of meandering. And it was just, but you still, of course, hear what's going on in the background, but that's not what's in focus. So I thought that was, if that, I'm sure it was done specifically in that way. I don't know if it was for that reason, but I did like the way that it was shot in that sense.
Yeah, no, and I
They
get
should hire me in Hollywood.
It's like, wow, we're doing a lot in 2021. Right? Okay,
I'm new. I'm brand new.
Right, it definitely seems like that. So hit her up, okay, and do that. So, anywho. So that was cool. So yeah, so I think that was important to show, because I feel like honestly that's how the whole movie was. It was just
the beginning.
The woman. So her name was Martha. Let's just use that. So, and that's played by Vanessa Kirby, and she's the one who lost her child. What I say take from this movie, and not from the angles or anything like that, but just in the whole point of it, is that grief, as we know, hits everyone differently.
Right.
And in this movie, though, what I liked the most was that the boyfriend, because I don't believe they were married, played by Shia LaBeouf. I think that's how you say his name. And so the partner, he kept calling him partner in the movie. And his grief was his mourning, actually, because there's a
Mhm.
difference between grief and mourning. His mourning was so visible.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I think in those situations, one partner, in this case, it was a heterosexual couple. So this husband or boyfriend partner, I'm sorry, was getting the attention in the movie. I'm saying, like, as far as seeing that his feelings mattered and that he actually was affected by it.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of times you see like the mom who is visibly distraught and can't go on, and this is the baby that she carried, and you would have no idea how she felt. And while they did touch on that, but he was like really going through it
Outwardly, yeah.
outwardly. And so as someone who does live a sober life, I am in sobriety. It was good because he actually was sober prior. He was sober leading up, so he had some issues with some drugs and alcohol. And the mother-in-law, who wasn't a fan of him, mentioned at some point in the movie that whatever about him staying sober. And I felt like he felt overly confident that he could do that. But then when grief came, he broke his sobriety.
Right.
And I think that was something that even in my review on YouTube, I left that out. And I was like, I make sure I got to bring it up here because I think that's another thing for our audience out there listening. When we have life figured out, when we've accomplished certain goals and overcome certain things, but then when you lose people, especially a child, your only child, and you were there when it happened, that's extremely traumatic.
Right.
And so in the movie, he just pretty much unraveled. However, not to talk this whole thing away by myself, like, why do I have a co-host here?
No,
just to
keep
keep
going.
talking. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I just don't want to lose this train of thought. I think in the movie, which is important in real life too, is that he would have had a better shot of staying sober, I think, if they worked through that together. But because grief exacerbated their relationship, and it just like it couldn't have drawn a further wedge, you're now on island still trying to survive and not drown. Does that make sense? So if his partner was more, I don't even want to think that's fair to say if she was more present because she's going through her own stuff. I don't know.
Well,
You jump in.
No, I think the thing about that is the fact that he was expressing, like you said, his mourning grief outwardly, where she was internalizing it. And so that in turn made her distant. And it also pushed her other family members away as well. So when you are internalizing something, especially so traumatic, you don't, talk about it. And people do tend to see that as you are not, like, something's wrong, like you're not doing it the right way. So in her case, the internalizing of the trauma and the losing of her child was so intense that, like, she was even just on the train and saw little kids, and you can see how that affected her, in that scene. And she tried to go back to work, and she just tried to just kind of keep going, so to speak. But that internal pain was looming and so ever present that it literally caused such distance between her and her partner. Unfortunately, that ended up not working out so great for him because he relapsed and did a
lot
whole
of
bunch
other
of
things.
other stuff that
Right.
was not good.
Right.
But we won't go there.
Listen, it happens though. I think
Yeah.
it's real. The movie was very real in those aspects. I think the only thing I probably say I didn't like necessarily, I think you can agree here, is we didn't love the end. I feel like the ending needed more, but everything in between, there was, like you said, the lady is going through her own internalized, but that wasn't good enough for her family. So her mother and her sister, if you do get a chance to check into the movie, they were pressuring her to essentially pressuring her to point fingers, if you will, because this is the thing. When tragic things like that happen, somebody's got to be at fault. Somebody has to be at fault. So the mother is at fault because she chose to have a home birth.
And the mother and Martha's mother made that clear that she blamed her for that.
Absolutely. And so
Which
people,
was terrible.
right, exactly, super terrible. So you have that, and then you also have the fact that you're not grieving and mourning the way people want you to. So then now that's a problem. But then the person, because in this case there was a midwife involved, now that you've got to take the fall for this, and everybody's not on the same page with that. I think one part too, and I know that a lot of parents who have experienced child loss, this probably really can be a very triggering movie. I just want to definitely give that warning to you, because the mom was wanting to make Martha, the mother who lost a child, was wanting to make certain decisions for the child's afterlife and how they were going to go about that burial, cremation, and donating her body for certain research and different things. And they weren't on the same page with that. So the partner, he was going behind her back, more so teaming up with her mom, who in the beginning, him and the mother didn't get along. And so now they're kind of like co-spiring, whatever it's called, to do certain things behind her back. So I think overall, I don't want to drag it out too much, but I just think that it's a movie that was important to see and to show. And it was just so many elements. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I did also just want to say one thing is because I tried to figure this out with the apple. And at first in the movie, it wasn't clear to me, at least, what that was about, because she's like eating an apple. It's just something about an apple, just like kind of
just lingering throughout every scene,
throughout the scenes after the child was born. Then, she said that when the child was born, the baby smelled like fresh apples. So I was like, okay. And then I did look up, well, what does an apple symbolize? And it symbolizes fertility and ruin, so life and death, and so then that got me thinking too, because I know we both didn't like the ending of the movie. We thought it was kind of like, we understood what they were trying to say, but it wasn't, I just didn't really think it was that great. But then because of the apple tree that was in there, that kind of now put that
absolutely
back into,
now, but see, you came on here with secrets.
Secret.
You didn't share that part with me, so now I'm
I had
out
to wait.
here.
I had to show.
Now,
but
now I'm out here saying that the ending was like, bruh.
I said the ending. We both agreed the ending.
Yeah, but adding that in though changes it, because
exactly. That's why I'm saying, when I thought more about it, I was like, I knew about the apple, and then when I saw that, okay, so that's what the apple symbolizes.
But because of the little child,
right?
But because of the little child, then you see, like, okay, if that's what apples symbol,
right?
Exactly. If that's what,
it makes more sense.
Then it makes perfect sense. Then
and so now we agree that the ending was okay.
It was okay. I think overall it was a decent movie. What do you think are some of the biggest takeaways that our audience here at the Griefbully podcast can take away from it if they were to look at it, even if you didn't lose a child, like just in terms of grief in general?
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was that you can't expect people to show your grief the way that you think they should be showing it. And I think that if the family was a little bit more understanding and tried to talk to her more about what she was feeling, instead of telling her what she should be feeling or what she should be doing or what she shouldn't be doing, I think that could have helped her to maybe internalize less, especially when your mom is blatantly telling you it's your fault. That's really difficult, I'm sure. And I didn't like that. I did not like that mom. But she's, I'm sure, went through some things too.
Right. Well, we just going to say that. But she did. I think at some point they did touch on that. Yeah, about how her mother was so like this, and they just got through and certain stuff like that. So there is, now that you mentioned that, there was a part where that was reflected, that the mom was basically responding, and her approach to life was based on how her mother and how their approach to life was. And so that actually did come up in the movie. There was a lot. I think a lot of these movies that we've been reviewing and looking at have been so different in so many ways, but also similar to an extent. And I think, like you said, the biggest common theme is that we all grieve and mourn differently. But the thing that I love the most is that it's showing these different facets in which we do that. Right. Because it's easy to say that, but when you see it in so many different ways, it's like, oh, okay. And even for a person. So say, for example, if you're not someone who is expressive or outwardly mourns, you don't have to feel less than. If you're listening to this and you feel like, well, wow, did I not love them as much because I'm not visibly distraught and I'm not falling apart and I'm not doing this and that. But it's like, you're a unique person, and your grief is as well. And I think that's what these movies are showing. Right. And like I told you, I love the part that the man because he was like really going through a tough time and not being shy about it or acting as if he had it all together. So that was important to show that, but showing the neglect. I think abandonment becomes a big part of the grief journey, whether you're abandoning yourself, your spouse, your children, your career, your dreams. I really think that it's hard as hell to continue to balance everything that you had planned and forecasted prior to the losses.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm so used to being on a podcast by myself that I promise you, I could have just continued to just talk for like 10 minutes
It's okay.
and not even gave you like a little piece. And I'm looking, I can see you there, and I'm just like in this mode and
You're just in your podcast zone.
In the podcast zone. But I love having a co-host, so I gotta, find out how to chill. Now you have to do better at cutting me off. How about that?
Nah.
Everybody, we gotta blame people. That's what it's about.
Nah.
When things go left, I gotta point my finger somewhere. It's not me. I'm a fabulous podcaster. How dare I ignore my co-host? But maybe if I was facing you more, then I probably would recognize it. But yeah, anyway. So we want to go off onto this long rant and tangent. I'm really appreciative that everyone has been rocking out and supporting these reviews and checking out these movies. Yeah, we got a lot of other ones. The next one, I'm going to be honest with you. I think we said this last time that we were going to rewatch the movie. But I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to. We might just scratch that off the list because it was so batch crazy.
Scratch it off
We
the
don't
list.
even know what the movie was called. I'm thinking of ending things. Just going to give you guys
We're gonna review that movie.
Just giving you guys this heads up. So if you want to get ahead of it, if you're listening to this or you're watching this and you want to go ahead and watch it, so when we're confused, maybe you will have answers for us, right? I'm not like a movie review sensei. Just somebody out here trying to bring more awareness to grief and making sure that we see our stories and that we understand the importance of having these conversations. It's so important right now. We've got so many phenomenal things going on in this 2021, just starting now. I mean, that's just from our own belief in our culture as people of color. There's a lot of great things that just happened more recently. And so these different conversations that we have to have are so important, and to challenge each other. Amanda Gorman's speech the other day was phenomenal at the inauguration, and I think things like that, like, is so brave. But what I'm noticing is, again, our words are so powerful, but when they're put in a creative way, so whether that's a movie or a poem or a book or what have you, so many different people have an opportunity to digest that maybe normally might not have. I was on a conference call for work, and this was a diversity call, so it was an array of people. And a Caucasian woman actually was very, very adamant. She said, no matter your political side of it, your party, it's not about partisan. That speech really, really touched it. But that girl, young girl, 20, people sometimes said she was 22, some said she was 23. I just know she was either one of those ages. And she had the guts to stay. I mean, I'm talking about you stood in front of the entire, pretty much probably world, and called some things out, put some things in our lap, gave us some things to think about. And I'm no Amanda Gorman, but that's what we're trying to do here, and that's where I'm trying to bring this full circle, is that we're seeing a lot more conversations about mental health and social injustice and so many different things, grief, loss, mourning. I follow a ton of pages, but I think there can never be enough conversation. But the conversation is not that important if we're not doing this part of it, if we're not listening. Right? If we're not listening.
Right.
What would you like to add?
You're the best.
Guys, I gotta just tell you, because you're going to really be wondering what just happened. And if you're watching it, then you saw what happened. And if you're listening, my lip just touched the microphone cover. And we are in the smack dab middle of freaking pandemic. And I just felt like Kevin Hart with the bum bump. I have it right now. It's like growing as we speak. Honestly, I'm like wondering if we can call the hospital and see if I could just get bumped up in an emergency room, because I'm like there. So that's what just happened. I was talking, my lip touched this, and wow, could have fainted. And then you would have been the host by yourself.
No, your podcast would be over if that was the case.
Grand opening and grand close, and they ended at episode 76 because the Grief Bully got a bum bump, and that was it. Man, it's so much fun having you on the show. I hope that you guys took something from this episode because, again, like we said, it's super important to do that. Pieces of a Woman, that was on Netflix. It came out in 2020. Vanessa Kirby, Shia LaBeouf. Again, he's going through some things right now, so you probably won't hear his name too much in promotions for the movie, but that's not my business. So I'm going to jump into our inspirational boost that is brought to us by our sponsors, Adena Jay Designs. They make, create, and inspire us through decorated apparel with signs, custom tumblers, all that good stuff. They're actually launching a lash extension business, Lash Lush by Adena Jay. So stay on the lookout for that as well. Our quote for the week is, "If it's out of your hands, it deserves freedom from your mind too."
Dun, dun, dun.
Wow. What are your thoughts?
Well, you should say what your thoughts are first.
Why?
Because I want to just look at your bum bump.
All right. So if it's out of your hands, it deserves freedom from your mind too. I think it just kind of goes along the lines of what we just talked about as far as like your story having to get outside of your body. And if you let go and like we believe, let go and let God, then you really have to let go and let God. Too many of us are losing sleep. Too many of us are worrying about so many things that we can't control.
Right.
And so if you say, hey, you know what? This is out of my hands, then it's got to be deserving freedom from my mind too.
Right.
And although we know that grief is not that easy, but I think what I can also add to this is that if you do focus on the things that you can control in your grief and loss, then it would be better. Because I have so many days where I have to tell myself I cannot bring them back.
Right.
I couldn't stop it from happening. And if I stay on that too long, like the parts that I couldn't control, it'll drive me out of my mind.
Right.
So when I say, hey, you know what? Yep, that happened. And now from there, this is what I can do. Right. And this is what I'm going to do.
And that brings that back full circle to the movie too, because at the ending, she was on stand at the trial for the midwife's sentencing. And, she made it very clear that this woman did not do this. Like she shouldn't be put to blame. If she could have controlled this from happening, she would have. So, yeah, that kind of, connects. Look at that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And so that's our inspirational boost. And I want to get into our Love and Memory segment. Guys, I just want to tell you, I was not aware that 400,000 people, over 400,000 people, have lost their lives to COVID-19. And that just saying that. And so if you did see President Biden and Vice President Kamala, because I really want people to start to say her name the right way. But Kamala Harris and their spouses at the lighting of all of those, it was like significance and remembrance the night before the inauguration. And I didn't catch it live. I just saw some glimpses of it. And when I saw that over 400,000 people lost their lives,
that's insane.
I'm saying, listen, my Love and Memory segment is going to have to absolutely go out to all of those families, all of those people. I mean, and this is the even more sad part, is it's end counting. People, I think 121 deaths were reported in New Jersey, where we're located, just yesterday.
Wow.
So although we have 9 million people in our state, we're still losing over 100 people a day. And so that adds up. I think we have lost over 16,000 people. And so it's a lot. And to know that some of those people are relatives and friends of people that I know, I personally haven't lost anyone. We personally haven't lost anyone that we're aware of to COVID-19. But I try not to spend too much time on the topic, only because it's weighing down on majority of us every day. But when I saw that, it really struck a chord, and I feel like I can't name every single person, but if I can just give a blanket out to that, because that number is astonishing and absolutely heartbreaking. So our love, our prayers, our well wishes to every family that has been dealing with the grief from the losses of family and friends due to COVID-19. So it's been another episode of the Grief Bully Podcast. Episode 76 is almost inked and officially in the book. I had my phenomenal co-host on with me today. I hope she comes back. Today's been a little silly, a little all over the place, but that's how I love it. You guys don't need to just continue to hear me go on and on and on about it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Let me know what you thought about this episode. You got anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Nope.
All right, guys, listen, follow Adena Jay Designs at Adena Jay Designs, ADENAJAYDESIGNS. You already know where I hang out the most over on Instagram. Follow me there at I_AM_J_Nicole, guys. So next time, you already know.
Love and light.
Peace.